In the autumn of 2011, the town of Dunmere was the kind of place where people forgot to lock their doors. The population was barely 20,000. Parents knew their neighbors. Teachers knew entire families. And serious crime was rare. That was why nobody paid much attention when a 14-year-old boy named Brandon Keene disappeared on a Friday afternoon. At first, everyone assumed he would come home. Teenagers wandered off all the time. Arguments happened. Phones died. It wasn't unusual. But Brandon never came back. 3 days later, search teams found his body near the edge of Ravenwood Forest. The discovery shocked the town. The tragedy dominated local headlines. Counselors were brought into Dunmere Academy. A candlelight vigil was organized. Hundreds attended. Among them was a quiet 15-year-old student named Talia Grayson. Nobody noticed her. Nobody had any reason to. At the time, she was just another teenager standing in a crowd. The police treated Brandon's death as an isolated incident. A terrible event. Nothing more. They were wrong. Because Brandon Keene was only the beginning. 6 weeks later, another student vanished. Her name was Sophie Marlowe. She was 14 years old. Popular. Friendly. The type of student teachers described as impossible to dislike. When she failed to return home one evening, panic spread through the town. Parents remembered Brandon immediately. Police insisted there was no evidence connecting the two cases. Privately, investigators were becoming nervous. The similarities were impossible to ignore. Two teenagers. Same age range. Same town. Both disappearing without warning. As search efforts intensified, residents began organizing volunteer groups. The entire community seemed united by fear. And once again, Talia Grayson appeared at every gathering, every vigil, every fundraiser, every memorial. People remembered her because she always seemed deeply affected by the tragedies. Some described her as compassionate. Others described her as unusually interested. But nobody thought much of it. Not yet. Then came the third victim, 16-year-old Dylan Corbett. The entire town changed overnight. By then, parents were keeping children indoors. Businesses closed earlier. Students stopped walking home alone. Rumors spread across social media. A serial offender. A kidnapping ring. An outsider passing through town. Everyone had a theory. The police created a special task force. Detective Owen Barrett and Detective Nina Crawford were placed in charge. For months they worked every lead. Nothing made sense. The victims came from different families, different social circles, different backgrounds. There seemed to be no connection, until investigators discovered something strange. Every victim had attended Dunmere Academy. At first, that didn't seem important. Almost every teenager in town attended the school. But then another detail emerged. All 3 victims had interacted with the same student during the months before they disappeared. Talia Grayson. The connection appeared insignificant. Students interacted with each other constantly. Detectives noted it and moved on. The case remained stalled. Then everything became worse. The 4th victim disappeared. 15-year-old Isabel Vaughn. The town entered full panic. Parents were terrified. News crews arrived from neighboring counties. National media began covering the story. People demanded answers. The pressure on investigators became enormous. And for the first time, someone came forward with information. Her name was Jenna Carlisle. She was 15 years old, and she had a story that detectives couldn't ignore. Jenna told investigators that Talia had become unusually interested in the disappearances. Not interested in a normal way. Obsessed. She constantly brought up details. Asked questions nobody else was asking. Repeated information before it became public. At first, Jenna thought it was strange. Then she became frightened. Detectives listened carefully. Still, suspicion wasn't proof. Teenagers talked. Rumors spread. That alone meant nothing. But Jenna's statement caused investigators to take a closer look at Talia Grayson. What they discovered changed everything. Talia appeared ordinary, almost invisible. Yet beneath that image, another picture was emerging. As investigators dug deeper into Talia Grayson's life, they expected to find answers. Instead, they found more questions. On the surface, Talia appeared ordinary. She attended classes. She earned decent grades. She had friends. Teachers rarely wrote her up for misconduct. Nothing about her school record suggested she would become the center of one of the most shocking investigations in Kingswell County history. But the deeper detectives looked, the more disturbing the picture became. Several teachers remembered incidents that had seemed insignificant at the time. One recalled Talia showing almost no reaction after another student suffered a serious injury during a sports event. While other students appeared shocked and upset, Talia simply watched. Another teacher remembered finding pages of handwritten stories in one of her notebooks. The stories were dark, not violent, just unusually focused on fear, control, and people manipulating one another. At the time, nobody considered it important. Teenagers wrote strange things all the time. But after the investigation began, those memories took on a different meaning. The most revealing information came from guidance counselor Margaret Ellis. She had met with Talia several times over the years. Not because Talia was disruptive. Quite the opposite. She was quiet, withdrawn, difficult to read. Margaret later described conversations that left her feeling uneasy. Not because Talia was aggressive, but because she often spoke about emotions as though they belonged to other people. When classmates discussed sadness, grief, or guilt, Talia seemed to describe those feelings as concepts rather than experiences. It was as if she understood them intellectually but struggled to connect with them personally. Even then, no one suspected anything criminal. The concerns never moved beyond private discussions. Life continued, and the warning signs remained buried. Investigators soon shifted their attention toward Talia's home life. What they discovered surprised them. Neighbors described the Grayson family as distant, not abusive, not openly dysfunctional, just disconnected. Patricia Grayson rarely interacted with people in the neighborhood. Trevor Grayson spent long periods away for work. Their home appeared normal from the outside. But according to people who knew the family, emotional warmth was almost non-existent. Several former classmates later recalled visiting the Grayson house and describing it as strangely quiet. Not peaceful, just cold. Conversations were short. Family members mostly kept to themselves. One classmate remembered spending an entire afternoon there without hearing anyone laugh. Again, none of these things proved anything. Many families are private. Many families struggle to communicate. But investigators began noticing a pattern. Talia appeared isolated long before the crimes ever occurred. Then detectives interviewed Lily Grayson, Talia's younger sister. The interview would become one of the most discussed parts of the case. Lily described her sister as intelligent, protective at times, but increasingly different as the years passed. According to Lily, there were moments when Talia seemed fascinated by how people reacted to upsetting events. Family arguments, school rumors, neighborhood tragedies. She paid close attention to them, almost as if she was studying people. Lily also described an unsettling habit. Whenever something dramatic happened in town, Talia would spend hours reading comments online. Not because she enjoyed the events themselves, but because she seemed interested in people's reactions. Fear, shock, anger, grief. Those reactions appeared to capture her attention in a way that normal teenage interests did not. Detectives found the behavior unusual, but still not enough to explain everything. The breakthrough came when investigators reviewed years of school records. Hidden among routine documents were small incidents stretching back nearly a decade. Nothing criminal. Nothing alarming on its own, but together they formed a troubling pattern. Reports of manipulation, reports of lying, reports of turning friends against one another, reports of creating conflicts and then quietly observing the aftermath. Individually, the incidents seemed harmless. Collectively, they painted a different picture, one that had gone unnoticed for years. By the time the case reached court, forensic psychologist Dr. Julian Locke had spent dozens of hours evaluating Talia. His conclusions divided experts. Dr. Locke did not describe her as a monster, nor did he describe her as a victim. Instead, he described a teenager who appeared unusually detached from the emotional consequences of her actions. According to court testimony, Talia seemed capable of understanding that people suffered. What concerned him was how little that suffering appeared to affect her personally. The distinction became one of the most debated aspects of the trial. Could someone so young truly understand the damage she had caused? Or had years of emotional isolation prevented her from developing normal empathy? Even experts disagreed. The public disagreed even more. Outside the courthouse, crowds gathered daily. Some demanded harsh punishment. Others argued that warning signs had been ignored for years. Gabrielle Foster of the Dunmere Chronicle published a series of articles examining Talia's childhood. Her reporting reignited a difficult conversation. Not about guilt. Most people believed the evidence spoke for itself. The debate centered on something else. Could any of this have been prevented? The question haunted Dunmere, because once people began looking backward, warning signs seemed to appear everywhere. Teachers remembered unsettling conversations. Classmates remembered strange behavior. Neighbors remembered uncomfortable encounters. Family members remembered moments they wished they had taken more seriously. But hindsight has a way of making clues look obvious. At the time, none of those moments seemed significant. Only after 4 families were left grieving did they begin to form a picture that many believed had been hiding in plain sight. And by then, it was far too late. Today, the case remains one of the most discussed criminal investigations in Kingswell County history. Not because of how old the victims were, not because of the media attention, but because of one disturbing question. How many warning signs existed before the tragedies occurred? And if someone had recognized them sooner, could 4 young lives have been saved? That question still divides people to this day. And it remains the reason the story of Talia Grayson continues to be remembered long after the headlines disappeared.